Hey guys, you're in the DawgHouse with Car Dog. This is episode 1 of my new podcast, and I hope you enjoy. So this week we're going to be talking about Culture Collision. Culture Collision was a great experience. This is my second time setting up, and it was a really, really good experience. I mean, we had tons of traffic, meeting new people, not only on the sports card side, but on the TCG Pokemon side. This episode is really going to be geared towards maybe if you're new to the hobby, just things that you should be expecting at a card show, and just giving an overall biased point of view. There's a lot that is truly missed when we're getting all of these examples of card shows through vlogs. Myself just recording my first few vlogs in the past year, and I'm including myself in this, but we always tend to see just the good side of the card shows. We don't really get into the bad side of things. And, when we watch these vlogs from a lot of these big streamers or influencers, it's made to look like rainbow sunshine and butterflies. And that's not the case a lot of the times. A lot of the times we have footage that we just don't throw in there and that, could give you a different side of things. So I'm going to start this whole podcast by talking about who I am and, my personal experiences in the hobby. And then we're going to move on to how a card show tends to work, how it works for a dealer, and just give you an overall, just a backdrop of what goes on behind the scenes, including a good conversation I had with Prism God this past Friday. So my name is Trey. A lot of people know me on Instagram as the Card Dog. I'm based out of Atlanta, and I do the local shows here in Atlanta whenever I can. And then I do Culture Collision and then a few other Southeastern shows. I tend to collect baseball and football, and I have been dealing at card shows now for about 2 years. I started off just, walking the floor. I really wasn't interested in being a dealer right off the bat when I got into the hobby. I started collecting Pokemon back in the 90s and baseball cards back in the 90s. So I was there ripping first edition Pokemon, and I actually did have a first edition Charizard that I traded to a kid named Steven down the road, who's probably rich now and driving a Maserati, and I hope he's doing well. But I always had a baseball card collection of the junk wax, and we had, Braves cards. We had the Chipper Jones, Andrew Jones, Andres Galarraga, all of these great Braves players that we know and love. You had John Smoltz, Tom Glavine, Greg Maddux, those cards. And to us, we just kept them in binders and, that sort of thing. And I truly never really left cards. I always kept my collection. I've had my family pass down collections to me. So I do enjoy collecting, and that's the main root of me is collecting. I really didn't get into the selling side of things until about 2 years ago. I just watched a couple YouTube videos like most of us do, and I didn't even know card shows like that existed. I went to a local show, talked to a few dealers, sold some cards that I had just had. I randomly went to Walmart one day because I hadn't bought a baseball card in, 20 plus years. So I just bought this baseball mega box, and I hit a serialized card. I didn't even know serialized cards existed. It was a Wander Franco, back when, he was a rookie and his cards were skyrocketed and the card was worth $100. Went to a card show, sold it because Wander Franco wasn't part of me. I'm always a Braves guy, so I was just there walking the show floor, and I really didn't get into wanting to deal until I went to an autograph signing at a local show, and I was getting Michael Harris's autograph. I had pulled a Michael Harris Gold out of Topps Chrome, and I got him to sign it. I didn't know it was such a bad thing to go get a card signed. You got to get it graded. You don't get a signature on the card. Well, to me, it's just PC. And, I got to meet him, and he was a very nice guy. And then in the midst of all this, there's this gigantic card show and, people walking the floor, making deals. And I just decided at that point that, hey, this might be something I want to look into. So I did have growing pains. I didn't really know, what I was doing. I probably sold cards for a lot less than what I probably should have. But, long story short, I just got into it and I learned from my mistakes and then just started really understanding the behind the scenes work that goes into this stuff. But fast forward till this week, as I said, we're going to talk about Culture Collision. Culture Collision is an Atlanta-based show, and it's my hometown. And Prism God, who runs the show, puts on a phenomenal show. So, automatically just, hats off to him and his crew. This show was just truly different. I didn't know what to expect going into 2025, because end of 2024, the fourth quarter is always slower. But the show was great. And, Prism had hired a wonderful lady. I won't put her name out there just for privacy reasons, but she is like I don't know the technical term, but we're going to call it like a vendor relations person. So she walks around, checks in on all the dealers, make sure, we have what we need, or if we have any concerns or we need something, she's checking in. And she was a very sweet lady, and she was very attentive to our needs. To start the show off, we had dealers set up on Thursday. It got delayed a little bit. They put out a post, and I got a real good look at what goes on behind the scenes. Unfortunately, the people that deliver all the tables and chairs, which if you've ever been to a big city-based card show, there's a ton. We're talking, 1,000+ tables, double the amount of chairs. They were late delivering the tables and the chairs. So we were a little bit delayed getting in, which that happens. That's logistics of a card show. And those things are going to happen. You're going to have hiccups like that. And Thursday when we got in there, dealers, can, set up and, if they want to do deals amongst each other or move inventory, they can. And we did that. We moved a good bit of inventory on Thursday. I shared a table with my LCS owner, or my local card shop that I go to. I don't work for the card shop, but we split a table and we just could not believe the volume and the size of the amount of cards that were moving. Fast forward through that day, we go into Friday. Fridays are weird days for card shows, right? Because you're not going to have the young crowd there because of school, unless their parents going to call in hooky for them saying, hey, my child's sick, AKA we're going to a card show. But, it was open for VIP members on Friday. And your VIP members, most of your business, in case you're thinking about doing, setting up as a dealer, the first day is the most important day of the card show. That's when a lot of your big time buyers, your repackers, all your breakers and all your card shop owners, they're all going to be there trying to buy inventory on the first day because they want to get in there and get the best inventory and get a lot of it quick and get out. Most people don't want to spend more time and money being at a card show all weekend. But from a dealer side of it, a lot of these dealers are coming from out of town, so they got hotels to pay for, food to pay for. So just to give like a little backdrop, when we're buying and trading and all this other kind of stuff, it helps us to really understand what's going on. And what I'm going to get into later in this podcast is talking about the bad side. Because I think there's some things that really need to be called out that I saw at this show in particular, and has nothing to do with Prism or his card show whatsoever. This has to do with the dealers themselves and the card shops. Because, a lot of the stuff you see in these YouTube vlogs, even mine included, if you go through my vlog, you won't see a deal being turned down or an argument or somebody getting smart with me or vice versa. Because I'm tending to one of those, like, I just, if something is not working for me and they're just not getting the point that I'm not going to sell my cards, at a price point that they want, like, I just shut it down. And not to be rude, I won't be rude until it has to get to that point. But what we're going to talk about is a couple of things that you don't see. And unfortunately, some of the big names, I'm not going to mention their names, but they're out there, and their true intentions will be found. You know, it's one of those where you just kind of see things, you don't really believe it, and I just went to go find out for myself. So we're going to fast forward to like Saturday, and I get in, and right when they open the doors for dealer setup, I actually had a good conversation with President God. We talked for like 20, 30 minutes. He's very humble and down to earth. I know a lot of people don't get a chance to really, talk to him. He's very busy at Culture Collision. But, he just decided to take the time to talk with me. I didn't even, ask for a conversation. Thursday and Friday were so hectic. I literally just, after seeing him being stressed on Thursday with the tables and chairs being late, I just went and gave him a fist bump and said, "Hey man, you're doing a good job. The show's good." And he was just like, "Hey man, thank you. We're trying." And I truly believe that his wholehearted intention is to grow the hobby and to grow his show. If you're a businessman, you want to grow. You want to grow and you want to be the best at what you do. And I think he strives to be the best at what he does. Atlanta is a very, very, historical town when it comes to sports. I mean, you're talking about the Braves. I mean, you're talking Hank Aaron. You're talking about, World Series during COVID. Just very historical in the fact of sports, the Georgia Bulldogs, the Georgia Tech. Just very, historical things that, that true people just, really can respect. So it's a great town to host a card show, especially of that size. And, he talked to me about his ideas about the future and what he wants to do. And I won't share those things. I think that's his story to tell and, his journey that he's going to, try to embark on. And I'm, wishing him all the best, for the future because if he does better, we do better. And, while there are good people in this hobby, there are some bad. And I saw this firsthand this weekend at Culture Collision, and I'm not going to call them out, mainly because I'm a true believer. Unless, they're doing something harmful to me, the word's going to get spread around about how people do business. And what I mean by that is when you have a lot of new people coming into the hobby, especially the younger generation, the kids and the teenagers, they may not know what comps are. They may not know what their card's worth. They may not know what a good deal is or what they should be getting for their cards. And it's unfortunate you're going to see people take advantage of that like I did this weekend. As I said, I was sharing a table with my buddy who owns a card shop down the road from me. And he had a kid who's like 16, 17 that, works at the card shop for him occasionally. He offered to sell me a card. And I told him, I was like, at the time, I was like, I'm not, trying to buy anything right now because I'm trying to sell through my inventory right now and et cetera, et cetera. It was a great card. It was a Puka Nakua rookie ticket red, PSA 10. And the card had been doing 600 to 650 like consistently, and it had like one bad comp on it, which was the most recent, but it had comp, the day before and like the week before and month prior, because Puka's market was up during the playoffs. And he goes to this particular dealer, whatever you want to call him, vendor, and they have the big sign buying and all this other stuff. And you're going to see those signs at card shows. They have buying with, we're paying this percentage and all that. And I tell people to shop around. If you're trying to sell a card, just shop around. See who's going to give you the best deal because it may be somebody's PC or they may be willing to pay a little bit more than the other guy. But there's just truly a percentage that's reasonable, and then there's just like something that's just, way out of limits. So he goes to this particular table, and it happens to be in our section. He comes back. He goes, "Man, they offered me like $300 for that card," and I just like shook my head, like what? And then I start to see the line of kids and younger kids just kind of going to this vendor, and I'm listening, and like everybody's just like walking away. So later on in the show, I have like 5 cards left that I really want to move, that I have left over that are not in my showcase. And these cards come to around $525. And this guy just looks at me and goes, "Yeah, I'll offer you $350." I looked at him and said, "$350?" And I showed him the comps on every single card. He's like, "Yeah, $350 is what I can pay you." I'm like, "See you later. No thanks." And it's unfortunate because this group is one of the faces of the hobby. And by no means am I telling people, what a good deal and what a bad deal is. But when you're offering 60 to 65% of comps, and you're talking these younger generation kids into a deal, and they just want to get a deal done because they want to be on a camera, or they think that's a good deal because they may trust this person because they see him on YouTube. It's really just disgusting in my opinion. It's sleazy. I don't enjoy seeing that at all. I'm a firm believer, when somebody comes to my table and a card's worth $100, 80%, is fair. In some cases, you can get to 85, sometimes 90%. The downtowns are a perfect example. A lot of people were paying 90 to 95% on downtowns in the last year. But if it's a liquid card, 80 to 85%, and I can turn the card for 90%, make 5% margin. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Somebody's getting 80 to 85% of what the card's worth, and then I'm just making 5%. Sometimes, I'll get full ask. It just depends. And not every deal is going to go the way we want it. And not every deal is shown in these YouTube vlogs. My vlogs included. I had a guy come to the table. He picked out about, 8 cards, and the cards comped for like $1,550, something like that. And he goes, "I'll give you 900. And I was like, "Let me redo the math. Let me just add these cards up in case I missed something." Added it up, $1,550. I was like, "What percentage are you trying to pay at?" He's like, "Oh, anywhere, 70, 75%. I said, "No, and plus that's not the right math anyway." He's like, "Well, I can come up to like 950. And I said, "No, we're not going to get a deal done. Sorry, buddy." And he just kind of walked away from the table like, this guy's an idiot or whatever. And, making sly comments. And, I probably showed my other side that most people don't normally see. And I just told him where it can go. I showed him the exit, and, nobody's going to sell their cards for that. Nobody in their right mind would. So you don't see those things in the hobby, at the card shows. You just, on the vlogs, you just see like, "Hey, we're getting the deal done with my guy here, easy deal, whatever. But in hindsight, we don't show you the 20 other deals where you tell somebody, "Hey, it's not going to happen. I can't pay you 100% for your cards, and I can't sell my cards for 70% to you." It's just not how it works. Not if you're wanting to, keep your money or make money. But I really feel like there's been something said in the past, and I think it's true, that we need to, grow the hobby. A lot of people want to 10x the hobby. The only way you're going to do that is bringing the new generation in. And you're not going to bring a new generation in, when we have vendors that are taking full advantage of people not being knowledgeable on what they're doing. And you're not going to do it, charging astronomical numbers for vendors, myself included. If people are flying out of town, you got to calculate hotel, motel cost, or, food, the cost of the table. It's one thing, I'll pay, good money for a card table, but at the same time, it's like, what are you getting out of it? How much product do I have to move in order to pay for my expenses? And there's just a lot of things that aren't seen like that. And Culture Collision in itself, getting back on track with that, overall positive experience. But, the bad side of card shows are the things that people do see that are at a card show, but you just truly don't believe it. Cards marked up 150% from comps. And I'm all for, hey, your card, your price. But when we get to a point where we have dealers that are literally stacking cards that will not move for the next 30 years because they're asking, 200x on a card. I tried to buy a card that was worth 175, offered 160. He told me to kick rocks and I left. That's fine. It's your card, your price. He was a little bit overpriced, but I mean, it was my PC. I was willing to pay, right at asking or below. And he pretty much told me, not today, Scooter, and get out of here. And I said, okay, good luck with the show. So you don't see those things. And a lot of dealers will have, no price tags. I have price tags on all my cards. If you do not have price tags on your cards, it doesn't mean that they're lazy. People have spreadsheets on computers back there. So don't automatically assume like, oh, somebody's trying to, get one on me. Sometimes, it's just hard work to sticker all the cards the day before or 2 days before and keep up with market when the market is so volatile and changing, especially football. You can have $100 card go down to $70, in a week. So it's hard to keep up. But when you go to those tables that do not have stickers and they're just standing back there with no computer or anything, you can automatically almost assume 99% of the time they're going to be overpriced and they're not going to work with you. I mean, I've seen cards that kids really want. They pay $150 for it. Cards worth $60. It's just like that. You're going to see it at every single card show you go to. And it's like, how do you memorize what a card is worth off the back of your head? They don't. They just know what they paid for it, and that's what they expect. So some dealers will not change, and they're not up to date or modernized with the market. And so you got to go in with the expectation that some of these dealers, they just know what they have into the card, and they want to make 50% profit on the card. It's unreasonable, but it's how they want to do business, and so they control their money and their product how they want to do it. When you come to like a table like mine or some of the other guys that I work with all the time, you can expect that they are going to be at market and they're going to work with you at market prices. Me personally, if I'm priced at market, I'll knock off 10 to 13%. I usually sell between the 87 and 90% range. So I'll give you that 10 to 13%, just depending on what you're buying or whatever, or how much you're buying. And sometimes I do have to take a loss on a card. If it's a card that I'm going to go negative into, sometimes it works out because they're doing a bulk deal, and I'll throw that card in just to kind of get a number to make sense. So those things do happen. But I want to make people aware that card shows are great and they are fun and they are an experience. But if you've never been to one, those are some things to really look out for. I am positive about the hobby. And as I mentioned, Prism God, he had mentioned some ideas that he has, and that's his story to tell, and that's his journey to embark on. And I hope the things that he told me do happen, and I hope he is successful at doing them, because it'll be huge, especially for us in Atlanta. But there are some big players out there that are not playing nice. And I don't get on this whole debacle of who's doing what, or, this person's going to do this, or this person's going to buy this, or who's going to run this show, that show, whatever. I'm not getting into that. But there are some bullies in the hobby, and they are trying to do what's best financially motivating for them. They're trying to just make $1. They're not trying to grow the hobby. If you're going to grow the hobby, you got to get the kids educated. You got to get the kids at the events, and you got to make it a welcoming experience. But when you have kids coming to your table because you have a big buying sign and you have a face that's on YouTube, and you're taking advantage of a younger generation, it's not cool. And it's not cool that you're doing that. And we as dealers, not only myself, but the others that were around you, saw it all go down. And, I try to be that person that doesn't pass judgment, But, as I said earlier, I went to the table and found out for myself what was going on. And it's not cool. You know, I understand if you have a business or a card shop or whatever it is you have and you're trying to make overhead. But when you're telling kids 60% is a good deal and you're talking them into a deal because you have your image and you're using your image to persuade others into a deal because they're not fully educated and they're nervous and they don't have their parent there, that's just not cool. So I just urge everybody, if you're at a card show and you see something like that going on, tell that kid or that young adult that, is sitting there constantly, you tell they're struggling, just say, hey man, you can shop around. If you kill that deal for that dealer, that's on them, because there are 3, 4, 5, 600 dealers in that room there that you can go and, make a deal with. It's the same thing about that Puka card I talked about earlier. That kid went over there. He said, man, they offered me $300. 20 minutes later, he came back, said that dealer over there paid me $500. So what are we doing? People want to utilize what the last card sold for, even though it consistently does this. And I'm not talking about a card that sells maybe once a week. I'm talking about a card that sells daily. And I hear them, offering these kinds of numbers. It blows my mind that we allow people in the hobby that put on this image of being the good guy and this, that, and the other, and then using their image. It's just not cool. And I've came across, a couple of YouTubers that, I've said hello to, and they just, they're all cocky and don't want to talk, and that's completely cool. And I do come across some of the YouTubers that are phenomenal. And I'll go ahead and give a shout out right now. I can give a shout out to Ryan Card Collector 2 and Brent for Shannon Sports Cards. Two of the best people in the hobby to work with, and Logan from Great Sport Cards. I met Ryan a couple of times. Ryan has always been great. He was at Culture Collision this weekend, and he was in the middle of a big deal. They had cards stacked up. They're doing math, and these kids come tap him on the shoulder. He turns around with a big smile on his face. He's giving them stickers, conversating, ask them how their show's going, looking at their cards, and they're giving him, these cards. And he is just like, he is the guy that kids, go towards. So they want to meet him. And for him to be in the middle of a big deal and just, turn around, talk to these kids and just, give them a sticker, kudos to him. And I've done deals with Brent over at Shan Sports Cards. Just a really good guy, just walking around. I've seen him give away free stuff, free shirts. And him and I have personally done deals at the last Culture Collision in September, and we got to meet. And, we talk about family, and we talk about, these other things behind the scenes. And you just know when you are amongst good people. I was, blessed enough to be next to Logan over at Great Sport Cards. I was set up next to him at Culture Collision. And, he comes to my table. We work a deal, easy. It's actually in the vlog. And you can see how easy he is to work with. And that's how deals are supposed to be. But I did edit out like 30 minutes of horrible deals or just horrible people, trying to, get one, for their team, it's never, it's never always going to be sunshine, rainbows, and butterflies and all that. But there does come a time where we have to speak up and we have to watch out for the younger generation. And, by Saturday, I think I lasted maybe 3 hours into the show and I sold out all of my inventory. But I really want all of us to come together and just say, hey, look, if you want to grow this, a 10-year-old can't hop into a break. And no, I don't get into the whole, breaks are bad, whatever. People do what they want with their money. And the repackers, they pay good on cards. They keep the market and the cards moving. Because very rarely, especially in football, are you seeing, football and basketball, honestly, do you see cards getting to the end consumer? A lot of these cards are just circulating, or they're sitting because they can't be sold. But, what's going to grow the hobby is the next generation. If a kid's going to a card show and he's getting ripped off, it may put a bad taste in their mouth and they may not want to be at a card show. And you just really have to want to bring in that younger audience, which is why I think Pokemon is so successful, because the dealers there are just very good and they understand that most of their base right now is the younger generation. Although we are seeing the Pokemon market kind of shift to like how the sports cards market is. You're starting to see more flippers and more people, breaking and all this other kind of stuff. So you really just have to take care of that younger generation, and you have to watch out for them. And I just encourage everybody just to, to do a check, right here, and just know that it's not about money. It's not about flipping and making a dollar. Sometimes you have to lose some to win some. But when when dealers are starting to notice that you're ripping kids off, it's not a good look. And it's not going to grow the hobby the way you want it to. And it's not going to give yourself a good reputation for your business. Because like I said, there's 500 other dealers in the room that'll gladly make a good deal. But for every 500 dealers, there's probably a couple hundred that are, not going to give you a great deal, but that's the whole point. It's a market. You can go move that card anywhere you want. If you can't move it at a card show, you can throw it on eBay, you can throw it on whatnot. But you have to get the audience into the card show. I think the card shows are very important. But the only way you're going to get people to go into the card shows is just to really focus on keeping the most amount of money in the dealers and in the buyers' pockets, which I think people are trying to do. But you really have to take care of that younger generation and really educate them and get them motivated to come in and do deals, because you're not going to have kids come into a card show after they've been ripped off. Or you're going to have a parent get frustrated because it's like a sleazy car salesman trying to sell you a base model car for the premium car product. It's just not how it's supposed to work. You can't sell me, a Camry for what you charge a Highlander. It just doesn't work that way. And I just really think, after this week and seeing those kinds of things, I decided I wanted to do a podcast because we really have to focus on getting back to the fundamentals and how we're going to get, the younger and the next generation into the card shows. Because a 10-year-old can't hop in a break, unless they're stealing their parents' credit card for whatever reason, or their parents are getting into breaks for them. You're not going to grow it that way. These kids want to go to the card shows. They want to see the cards. They want to put their hands on the cards. They want to rip into wax. That's how I started. I didn't go to card shows when I was a kid. I wanted to rip open the cards, of Pokemon and chase the Charizard, which I ended up hitting. I wanted to chase and get a holographic. Same thing now. People want to open up wax, They want to go hit the Jaden Daniels out of Prism, but they can't afford the Jaden Daniels out of Prism when we're charging $1,200 a box. And you're not going to have a shot at that card at current wax prices. But in closing, I really just wanted to put the focus on being better. I think we can all be a little bit better, and myself included. I'm not perfect. If you've, seen me in person, and you've seen me kind of, have to put a few people in their place. I cut that footage out, but it's funny. I mean, the last 5 minutes of my last vlog was me having fun banter with one of my buddies. I paid like $140 for a card that's worth $100, but it was a PC card, and he was into it for like $125. I was like, I'll give you $140. And anyways, we just had banter back and forth, and that's all fun and games. But what I cut out was me telling a guy, where the exit was, because he was wanting to pay a ridiculous amount of money for cards that I had. But in closing, in this DawgHouse podcast, I want to say thank you just to all the people that came by, my table at Culture Collision, the people that followed me, were talking to me at the table, people that, walked by and saw my logo and they said, "Go Dogs." They know I'm a big Georgia fan. To everybody that came by and got like the free stickers and just to say hello. Thanks to Logan over at Great Sports Cards for being a good neighbor. And I was right next to a Pokemon guy, thanks. I didn't really get his name. He was busy. He was high-end Pokemon dealer. And that was a wild experience watching him. But for everybody that got to meet, thank you, for coming by. And it was very good to meet you all. And this is hopefully, a new podcast that we can continue. I don't know if I'll be on a schedule doing it weekly or monthly or whatever. But I would like to have some feedback. So drop a comment down below or send me a message on Instagram at the car dog of what you would like to hear. Or if you'd like to be a guest and we just talk about things in the hobby, I'm down for that. My true goal is to always be a positive person, and grow the hobby and, just to make friends. This is for fun for me. I have a full-time job, a full-time gig. This is just strictly for fun. This isn't a full-time gig for me. But I do appreciate your time and you watching the video. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Drop a comment down below, hit the like button. And next time you're in the doghouse with me, you got to know that we're talking about cards, right? See ya.